Imagine carrying a wounded alien across 90 miles of burning desert. No map, no backup, no idea who she really is. You're not a hero, just a tired soldier who made a choice. But what if that choice rewrote the fate of two worlds? This isn't just a rescue. It's the beginning of a love story, a war for peace, and a bond that no one, not even the stars, saw coming. Stay with us. You've never heard a story like this. If you are new here, then please subscribe this channel and show thumbs up by liking the video. Let's move toward wonderful story. The air still shimmered with heat and silence after the battle, the kind of silence that doesn't bring peace but holds danger in its breath. Flames flickered in the distance, the last breaths of fallen machines, and smoke curled upward like whispers from the dead. Noah stumbled over cracked earth, his boots sinking slightly in ash. His uniform clung to him, drenched in sweat and stained with dust and blood. He moved like a shadow, careful and quiet. His rifle held close not out of aggression but as a lifeline. Everything he knew had fallen apart hours ago. The mission had been clear: hold the line against the alien invaders. But nothing about the enemy had matched expectations. They weren't mindless monsters. They moved with strange grace, their weapons singing with light instead of fire. And they were winning. Noah had been separated from his unit when the blast hit. Most of his comrades never got back up. He didn't know if the others had survived, or if he was the last one crawling through the ruins of a failed defense. Then he saw her. She wasn't like the others. Not armored, not armed. She moved through the battlefield like a dream that didn't belong there. Her robe shimmered in the dying light, colors shifting as she stepped, like oil on water. Her skin had a faint glow to it, something between silver and pearl, and her face, strange but beautiful, was marked with confusion and pain. Noah froze behind a broken beam, eyes fixed on her. She wasn't attacking. She wasn't even looking for a fight. But someone shot her anyway. The bullet grazed her side just above the waist. She gasped and dropped to one knee, clutching her side as the fabric darkened with her blood, bright green, almost glowing. Her people, if they were near, didn't come to help. Maybe they didn't know. Maybe they had already fled. Noah looked around. No movement, no voices, just the wind and fire. His heart pounded. Every bit of training screamed at him to stay hidden, to survive, to wait for extraction. But something about her, kneeling in the dust with her glowing blood and silent strength, made that impossible. She wasn't just another enemy soldier. She looked lost, hurt, alone. Noah's breath caught in his throat as he stood and took one cautious step forward. Then another. His rifle stayed slung at his side, his hands empty and raised. She looked up sharply, her eyes like mirrors reflecting more than just light. They held questions, warnings, curiosity. She tensed as he got closer, her muscles ready to strike, but she didn't move. She was in no condition to run. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said softly, knowing she wouldn't understand the words. But maybe she could feel the meaning. His voice was calm, low, steady. He kept his hands where she could see them. Her breathing was shallow, and when she tried to speak, it came out as a series of gentle clicks and hums, soft, melodic, and unlike anything human. Still, he knelt down beside her slowly, inch by inch, until he was close enough to see the wound properly. It wasn't deep, but it was bleeding steadily. Noah took off one of his gloves and reached gently toward her. She flinched but didn't pull away. He scooped her up carefully and with effort. She was lighter than he expected, her body warm against his chest. Her head rested near his shoulder, and her breath fluttered softly against his neck. Up close, she smelled strange. Not bad, just unfamiliar, like a blend of wildflowers and cold metal. Every step away from the battlefield felt like walking into madness. What was he doing? Carrying a wounded alien? Deserting the mission? But his gut told him he was doing the right thing. Or at least, the only thing he could live with. The landscape stretched out in front of him, dry, cracked, endless. Somewhere far beyond the hills and wreckage there was a safe zone, At least that's what he hoped. No maps. No radio. Just his instincts and the steady rhythm of his steps. She didn't resist. Maybe she couldn't. Or maybe she was choosing to trust him the same way he had trusted that strange look in her eyes. As the sun began to set, painting the sky with shades of fire and ash, Noah kept walking. His legs already ached, and the sweat burned in his eyes, but he didn't stop. He couldn't. Her life was in his arms now, her quiet breath steady against him, a living mystery wrapped in pain and silence. And for the first time in what felt like years, he wasn't thinking about orders or war or survival. He was thinking about her, about what she was doing here, about what she meant, and about why, when everyone else ran, he had chosen to carry her into the fire. The wind howled through the open plains as Noah pressed forward, each step slower than the last. The heat beat down on his back like a hammer, turning sweat into steam against his skin. The alien woman, Seren, he had decided to call her, lay cradled in his arms, her body warm but unmoving. She hadn't opened her eyes since he carried her from the wreckage, but her shallow breaths told him she was still holding on. He didn't know what drove him, maybe guilt, maybe hope, but he couldn't leave her behind. Not after what he'd seen in her eyes back on the battlefield. There had been something there. Not just pain, not just fear. Something human, something worth saving. Noah had no plan, no map, no destination really. He only knew there were stories of an abandoned outpost 50 miles south. Maybe less, maybe more. The military had stopped using it months ago, but it was his only hope of finding shelter or water. His canteen was nearly empty, and the sun showed no mercy. Each time he looked down at her, he was reminded of how fragile she seemed, how easily life could slip away if he stopped moving for too long. By the second day, the land began to shift. Dry grass replaced scorched sand, and strange trees stood in crooked lines like ancient guards watching their slow progress. Noah paused under one such tree, easing Seren down against the roots. He checked her wound again, still oozing faint, green, but not as much. He cleaned it with the last of his water, biting back the guilt. She needed it more than he did. As he rested, a soft rustle came from nearby. Instinct kicked in. He reached for his rifle, only to spot a small creature peeking from behind a bush. It was no bigger than a cat, with fur that shimmered in sunlight, and eyes too large for its round head. It tilted its head, watching them. Then, to Noah's surprise, it crept closer, not toward him but toward Seren. The creature sniffed the air, gave a chirp, and curled up beside her, like it recognized her. Noah blinked, uncertain whether to chase it off or thank it for the company. In the end, he let it stay. They needed all the kindness they could get. That night, Noah built a small fire with the driest branches he could find. He sat beside Seren, watching the flames dance, his legs sore and blistered. The little animal, he called it Kiva, dozed by her side, occasionally making soft purring sounds. The stars above looked strange, twisted in ways he didn't recognize. Or maybe it was just that he hadn't looked at the sky in years without thinking about war. He spoke quietly, not expecting a reply. "I don't know what you are, or why you were there, or why I couldn't walk away, but I'm here. And I'll get you somewhere safe, even if I have to carry you the whole damn way." Seren stirred just slightly, and Noah felt her fingers twitch against his chest. The following day they met someone. Old Rowan was a strange sight, lean, sun-baked, with a long gray beard and skin like worn leather. He lived in a shack made of scrap metal and solar panels, surrounded by empty land and forgotten memories. Noah approached carefully, keeping Seren in his arms and his rifle visible but lowered. Rowan didn't seem surprised to see them. He eyed Seren for a long moment before speaking. "She's not from here, is she?" Noah shook his head. "No, I don't know what she is." Rowan chuckled dryly. "She's someone important. I fought their kind once, long ago. Not all of them want war." Noah asked if there was water, food, anything. Rowan offered a little of both. While Noah patched Seren's bandages with fresh cloth and cleaned her wound, Rowan sat nearby, sipping from a dented metal cup. "You carrying her like that?" "It means something," Rowan said. "Not just to her. To you, too." Noah didn't answer. He didn't know how. Before leaving the next morning, Rowan placed a hand on Noah's shoulder and said quietly, "Sometimes saving someone else is the only way to save yourself. But don't forget, you're walking into her world, not yours." They traveled on. Each day, Seren became more aware. She blinked more often, shifted in his arms, and sometimes hummed softly. On the 5th day, she tried to sit up. It didn't last long, but the effort was there. Noah encouraged her gently. "Not yet," he'd whisper. "Soon." By the 6th day, she made a sound, just one. A soft, melodic note that made Kiva chirp in response. Noah paused, heart pounding. She was waking up, slowly but surely. Whatever she was healing from, it was working. And with every mile they walked, he felt their connection grow, built not on words but on something deeper. Shared silence, shared pain, shared hope. The land began to change again. Hills gave way to dry valleys. Noah's strength waned, but he didn't stop. Because now, when he looked at Seren, he saw more than just someone he had saved. He saw someone he couldn't imagine leaving behind. P1. Sun had barely risen when Seren took her first full step on her own. Noah had woken to the sound of soft rustling and looked up to find her standing, barely, leaning against a tree. Her robe, torn and stained with dust and old blood, fluttered slightly in the breeze. Her eyes met his, steady and quiet, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. There was no need. The air between them had changed. She was no longer just a burden to carry. She was becoming something more, someone walking beside him, not behind him. They continued through a canyon, its walls high and tight, the light above barely touching the path. The shadows here seemed to move with a mind of their own. Seren walked slowly, using Noah's arm for balance. Her movements were cautious but filled with quiet strength. Though they still couldn't speak the same language, gestures and looks were enough. When Noah pointed out a loose rock or signaled to stop, she understood. And when she noticed something strange ahead, small marks in the dirt, faint but deliberate, he followed her lead and paused. It wasn't long before they found who made them. A figure stepped from behind a rock, tall and slim with skin like polished stone and armor that shimmered in the dim light. Seren froze. So did Noah. The stranger raised a hand, not in threat but in recognition. He looked at Seren, then knelt down on one knee. A sharp breath escaped Seren's lips. Noah didn't understand the words exchanged, but the tone told him everything. This was someone from her world, a soldier, a scout. His name, as Seren later gestured, was Tellen. He spoke briefly to her in musical tones, and she answered in kind. Noah watched quietly, unsure if he was being judged or simply ignored. Then Tellen turned his gaze on him. There was something in the scout's eyes, not anger, but a deep, silent weighing of his soul. Tellen stepped closer and placed 2 fingers over his heart, then nodded once. Noah didn't know what it meant, but Seren smiled softly afterward. That was enough. Tellen didn't stay long. He warned them through Seren's gestures. Others were watching. Not all of her people would accept a human walking beside her, especially not her. That much Noah was beginning to piece together. She wasn't just anyone. She was important. Royalty, maybe. A leader. Or someone with the power to change things. And she had chosen to trust him. The journey took them higher into the hills. The wind grew colder, and the trees thinned until only stone remained. One night they reached a narrow ridge overlooking a glowing valley far below. It pulsed with light, like stars had fallen into the earth and never left. Seren stared at it with wide eyes, her expression mixed with longing and fear. Noah asked softly, "Is that your home?" She didn't answer with words. Instead, she took his hand and held it tightly. The next morning, they met someone else. An old woman stood by a pool of clear water, her long cloak rippling as if caught in a wind no one else could feel. Her eyes glowed faintly, and when she looked at Seren, she bowed. Not deeply, but with respect. She didn't speak, not at first. She simply stepped forward and placed her hand over Seren's wound, now nearly healed. The woman whispered something, and a faint shimmer passed between them. Seren blinked, startled, then turned to Noah. "She sees you," she said in a soft, accented voice. Noah's mouth fell open. It was the first time she had spoken a word he understood. You can talk?" Seren nodded. "Learning, watching, trying." The old woman, Valea, Seren called her, sat with them by the fire that night. Her voice was rough and deep, but gentle. Through Seren, she explained that Noah's arrival was not by chance. There were stories, old and half-forgotten, about a time when two worlds would meet not with weapons but with hearts. Valea looked into Noah's eyes and said he carried something different, something rare. Noah didn't know how to respond. He didn't feel special. He felt tired, sore, and confused. But when Seren looked at him, he felt seen in a way he never had before. Their journey wasn't over. Valea warned them that Seren's city would not welcome him. She had left in defiance of orders, seeking peace while others sought war. Her return would spark questions, resistance, maybe worse. But she believed in something bigger now, and she believed in Noah. They walked on together. Seren grew stronger each day, walking with more confidence, speaking more human words. Noah picked up a few of hers too, though he stumbled through them with awkward sounds. They laughed often, even if they didn't always understand each other. One evening, as they set up camp beneath a sky filled with unfamiliar stars, Seren turned to him and said, "I was lost. You brought me back." Noah looked at her, unsure of what to say, but in that moment words weren't needed. He reached for her hand. She didn't pull away, and in the silence, they both understood something important. The road had been long, but the real journey was just beginning. The valley opened before them like a dream carved out of mist and sunlight. Towering structures stretched toward the sky, their walls glowing with gentle light. Pathways of floating stone curved through the air, connecting tall spires and strange tree-like buildings. Everything shimmered softly, as if the entire city was alive and breathing. Noah stopped at the edge of a hill, his breath caught in his throat. This was Seren's home. He had imagined many things during their journey, but nothing could have prepared him for the beauty of this place, or the feeling deep in his chest, like he was about to step into a world that would never fully be his. Seren stood beside him, silent and still. Her eyes were on the city, but her hand was wrapped tightly around Noah's. She didn't smile. Her face was calm, but her fingers trembled just slightly. She knew what was waiting. Questions, doubts, judgment, and perhaps even anger. Still, she stepped forward, pulling Noah gently with her. As they walked down the slope, figures began to appear. Tall, graceful beings in robes and armor. Some watched in silence, their faces unreadable. Others whispered to one another, eyes narrowing at the sight of a human walking beside one of their own. Noah felt every stare like a weight pressing on his chest. He didn't belong here. That much was clear. But Seren never let go of his hand. At the edge of the city, a group of guards blocked their path. Their armor sparkled in the morning light, and each one carried a long, elegant spear. They bowed low to Seren, but their eyes flicked toward Noah with sharp suspicion. One guard stepped forward, speaking quickly in their native tongue. Seren responded just as firmly, her voice calm but strong. After a tense silence, the guards stepped aside. They were allowed in. The city was quiet, but alive. Soft lights moved through the streets like floating lanterns. Creatures Noah had never seen wandered freely. Some looked like deer with wings, others like cats made of smoke. The people, too, were strange and beautiful, with eyes that seemed to see too much. As they passed, the stares continued. But Seren walked with her head high, guiding Noah toward the center of it all. They reached a large hall carved into a crystal mountain. Inside, the walls sparkled with color, changing as they moved. At the far end stood a high platform with a throne carved from living stone. Dozens of alien figures filled the room. Leaders, soldiers, and elders. Their voices fell silent the moment Seren entered. She stepped forward alone, letting go of Noah's hand only at the last moment. She spoke with purpose, her voice echoing across the chamber. Noah didn't understand the words, but he understood her tone. It was proud, steady, and unshaken. She gestured toward him often, and each time she did, the room reacted, some in confusion, others with shock or even anger. Noah stood at the edge of the hall, unsure of what to do. He felt exposed and out of place, but then Seren turned to him and spoke in clear, careful English. "Come here." Noah hesitated, but she extended her hand. With slow steps, he walked to her, standing beside her on the platform. The room buzzed with energy. A wave of voices filled the air, rising and falling. Seren raised her hand and the room quieted again. She turned to face him fully. Her eyes shimmered with emotion. "You carried me through darkness," she said softly, her words for him alone. "You showed me a path I couldn't see. I was meant to lead alone, but I choose not to." Then louder, she spoke to her people. This time Noah heard a word he recognized, his name, and then another. "Partner." There was a long pause. Then movement. One of the elders stepped forward and spoke. Slowly, others followed. Their tones were wary but thoughtful. A conversation began, one Noah couldn't follow, but Seren handled with calm strength. He could feel the energy shift in the room, not entirely accepting, but no longer rejecting. And then, without warning, Valea entered the hall. The old woman from the mountain pool. She walked slowly but with great presence. The crowd parted for her without question. She approached the platform and placed a hand over Noah's heart, then over Seren's. She said something short and clear. Seren translated. "She says the bond is real." The room fell silent once more. Then, to Noah's surprise, the elders began to nod. A few bowed their heads. One even stepped forward and placed his palm on his chest in a gesture of respect. The change was slow, but it was happening. Later that night, as the city lights glowed softly around them, Seren and Noah stood on a high balcony. The stars above were brighter than he'd ever seen. She leaned against him, her head resting gently on his shoulder. "They will accept you," she whispered. Noah looked at her, his voice low. "I don't want a throne." She smiled. "Then we'll share it and make it something else." He wrapped his arms around her, holding her close. The journey had been long, full of pain, fear, and doubt. But here, in this strange city under a sky full of stars, Noah felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Peace, not because the world had been fixed, but because they were going to fix it, together.